Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! "10 years ago, I worked in a community center where people would come to play pool, play board games and drink tea. There was a computer available for clients to use as many still didn't have smartphones or home Wi-Fi. The clients were always considerate of others until one guy joined and ruined it for everyone else. He would rock up, plug in his headphones and hug the computer all the time, watching Beyonce videos, playing pocket billiards and laughing like Beavis and Butthead all day long. The manager was a coward who wouldn't let us do anything, even when he started becoming aggressive towards other clients, who only asked nicely if they could use a computer for 10 minutes to pay a utility bill or check their emails. A week or so after being told not to challenge him, I got a new home computer and had a eureka moment while setting it up. Turns out it's really easy to enable/disable a sound card once you know how. So next day I got to work early and did just that. None of the other clients noticed because they only used the computer for admin, not for perving over music videos. When he realized there was no sound, he threw a tantrum. I played dumb and said no idea, it was working yesterday. Maybe your headphones are broken. He sulked off and came back 20 minutes later with a pair of freshly bought expensive-looking headphones, but of course, there was still no sound. At this point, he threw an even bigger tantrum and demanded I fix it. When I carried on playing dumb and said I didn't know how to, he lost his temper and grabbed me by the shirt collar. That was too far even for my manager, who finally grew a backbone and banned him from the center. I enabled the sound card again the next day and everyone was able to enjoy their tea and board games in peace again. As a young girl, I always felt like I was walking on eggshells around my mother, no matter what I did. I was never able to please her. I remember constantly feeling like I was not good enough, like I was always falling short in some way. One day, as per usual, I came back home, cooked dinner and was doing my homework in my room while my mother came back from work. I could hear her yelling and screaming that she didn't want to eat burgers. I came downstairs and she started ranting as soon as she saw me. She became fixated on having a steak for dinner. I had already made hamburgers, but that was not good enough for her. In a fit of anger, she grabbed a hot skillet filled with sizzling oil and threw it into the oven, turning the temperature to the highest setting. "You will make me my steak dinner now." Within minutes, the kitchen was in flames. I was terrified and I remember feeling like I was frozen, unable to move. But then I heard the sound of the fire trucks and the sirens, and I knew that help was on the way. The fire department arrived quickly, and the firemen were able to put out the fire. They found my mother in the kitchen and she was taken into custody and later charged with arson. The next few months were a blur. I'm dealing with the aftermath of the fire and the criminal trial, and I was also trying to come to terms with the fact that my own mother had caused this destruction. I was filled with a mixture of emotions, anger, sadness, and confusion. During the trial, I was forced to confront the reality of my mother's behavior. I listened as witnesses testified about the events of that night and about the history of her anger and resentment. I was shocked and saddened to hear how she had mistreated me for years. But even through all of that, I held on to hope. I wanted to believe that my mother could change, that she could get the help she needed and become a better person. And that's exactly what happened. After serving her sentence, my mother made a public apology and sought help for her anger and resentment. She worked hard to make amends for her past actions, and I was able to forgive her. We started to rebuild our relationship, and I was able to see a different side of her. She was kinder and more patient, and she was truly sorry for what she had done. This is more of a playful revenge when compared to basically everything else on here, and the situation is a lot more wholesome. So a bit of context, I was a student who barely ever spoke and always kept to myself. Basically, the quiet kid in the corner people forget that was even in the class. My teacher, let's just call him Mr. Teacher, was a late 30s to early 40s balding man. He was one of those fun teachers that was pretty into current memes, but not in a cringy way. He was genuinely pretty good with his sense of humor and up-to-date jokes. However, he also had a bit of an ego. Not too big, but he always seemed to want to prove he was the smartest in the room, one way or another. One day, instead of doing classwork, we got distracted as he tried to prove that no wish is safe from being manipulated by a genie. So the class challenged him that they could find an incorruptible wish. There were a few basic wishes that people made, such as, "I wish for more wishes," to which he would say, "Granted, now you have 2 wishes left." But you desire an infinite amount of wishes and can't make up your mind anymore. "I wish I was a top streamer on Twitch." Granted, streaming is now your life. You have gained no other life skill, and by the time you're as old as me, you will realize that all you have is streaming and nothing more. "I wish for no loopholes in my other 2 wishes." Granted, consequences are not loopholes, and words can have multiple meanings and interpretations. No wish was safe, and the students were becoming more and more hopeless that there were really no incorruptible wish for Mr. Teacher, the genie. All this time, I'm just enjoying the fact that there is no classwork being done and not really paying much attention to what's happening. But seeing Mr. Teacher with that huge grin, so happy that he made all his students depressed so early in the morning, I just had to do something about it. I came up with my own wish that he wouldn't dare mock or corrupt. At this point, no one is given any more suggestions, and Mr. Teacher is just begging for one more wish to ruin. So here comes my hand being raised in the back of the class with my own huge grin to match his. He motions at me to go ahead, and I say, "I wish Mr. Teacher got his hair back." And all students collectively lost their stuff. Mr. Teacher could only open and close his mouth a few times, with no words coming out before finally blurting out, "I don't want to do this anymore." Then proceeds to make the whole thing into a "be careful what you wish for" lecture. I never got an answer for my wish. Edit. Forgot to add how the whole thing started. This small group of students were talking about their future and what they wanted to do or accomplish. Like one wanted some specific luxury or sports car, another wanted to be Twitch famous, and so on. Mr. Teacher came in and basically told him that their dreams were not as sunshine and rainbows as they were making it out to be, and hit them with reality checks. Then the whole topic of incorruptible wish came up, so he played the genie role with the whole class getting involved. He meant well with the whole "be careful what you wish for," but it also came out like your dream is bad. And here is why. Still worked, I guess. And he was still one of the best teachers that not many knew about. The following event happened over 30 years ago, but my mom still scolds me about it from time to time, citing it as both a demonstration of my inability to stick up for myself, as well as a refusal to support her. First, let me set the stage with some background information. Growing up, I, male, was always small and underweight. Even though I'm fully grown, I'm only 5'5", and in high school, I never weighed more than 125 pounds. My mom, on the other hand, has always struggled with her weight since having her first baby. She's about 4'8", but she always weighed close to 200 pounds. We went out to eat almost every week, but I was made to order a kids' meal for kids 12 and under until I was about 15 or so. And once I got too big to order one of those, I always had to share my meal either with one of my sisters on the premise that we were smaller than other kids our age, or with my mom. I always had to share my meal either with one of my sisters on the premise that we were smaller than other kids our age, or with my mom, who then claimed that she was exercising portion control as part of her perpetual weight loss regimen. When I turned 19, I joined the army, gained 11 pounds in basic training, and gained about 6 more after. So I got to about 142 pounds before stabilizing my weight. At the time this story takes place, I had just left the army and had spent several years getting used to eating full adult portions of food. I was visiting my parents and they took me out to eat. When we got to the restaurant, my mom asked me if I wanted to share some fajitas. I looked at the menu, saw that they offered a platter of fajitas for two, so I agreed. Even though my mother was born in the United States, she moved to Mexico at a very young age before returning to the US as an adult, so her English is heavily accented and not always grammatically correct. When the waiter came to take our order, she loudly declared, "We will have fajitas, and we will share," while pointing to me. The waiter nodded his understanding and moved on. The food came out and it was great. Throughout the meal, my mother commented on how delicious it was. I was still maintaining much of my military regimen at the time, so I was knocking out push-ups and sit-ups every morning in addition to walking or running several miles a day, and I was able to easily put away lots of food. We made short work of those fajitas, and I even ate all the grilled onions and vegetables on the platter. By the time we were done devouring our meal, there wasn't a scrap of food left. Everything was fine until the waiter dropped off the bill and my mother noticed that we had been billed for the fajitas for two platter. Suddenly, the whining commenced. She's been tricked into overeating. She wasn't feeling well. Why couldn't the waiter just get the order right? Was I feeling okay after eating all that? I'd spent the entirety of my childhood dealing with her constant outrage and non-stop complaining, so I took it in stride. I told her that I was fine, that I enjoyed the meal, and that I was glad that we got the order for two because the order for one wouldn't have been enough. Well, that was beside the point. We were being overcharged, and she was going to make it right. That's when the waiter came by and asked if everything was alright. She responded by launching into the same tirade that I had been enduring for the past few minutes. I wanted to sink into the chair. I mostly kept my head down, unable to look the waiter in the eye, but the few side glances that I snuck his way indicated that he was at loss. He alternated between enduring her rant and incredulously eyeing our clean plate. After calmly explaining to her that he couldn't compensate us for our order when the platter was completely clean, she demanded to see the manager. The manager came out and did the same song and dance as the waiter. After several minutes of histrionics and threats, the manager told her that the best he could do was 10% off that dish. By this time, my mom realized that he was as close as she was getting to a win, so she took it. When the manager left, she was still fuming. She turned to me and said in Spanish, "Can you believe that? Don't you think I was in the right?" I replied honestly. I told her that no, she wasn't in the right, that I had also been under the impression that she was ordering fajitas for two, and I reiterated that I enjoyed the meal as it was. When I was in 6th grade, elementary school in Southern California, we had an awful principal. Let's call him Mr. Sir. To give you an idea of why I thought he was awful, he mandated a rule that when we were at recess, we couldn't be in groups larger than 3 people because of gangs. This is elementary school, people. The proctors enforced this and would blow a whistle at your group if your group was larger than 3. Me and my friends usually rotated, having someone walk away from the group, then rejoin when the proctor wasn't looking. This is just one example of why I hated this principal. On to the story. Apparently, Mr. Sir thought that all of us kids were too loud at lunchtime in the cafeteria. His office was near the cafeteria, which was outdoor, but had roof coverings over all the tables. So one day he had this noise monitor installed in the cafeteria that looked like a stoplight. If you look up Yacker Tracker on Google, it looked kinda like that. If it was too loud in the cafeteria, the stoplight would be red, and if it was an acceptable noise level, it would be green. If it was really loud, the stoplight would flash red. The stoplights have been installed for a little while, maybe a week or two, can't remember. But pretty much all of us kids would ignore it and it would constantly be on red during our lunch period. The stoplight was mounted up on a wall that was too far for any of us kids to reach. One day, Mr. Sir comes out of his office with a bullhorn and yells at all us kids that we are being too loud. The stoplight had been red that whole lunch period so far. He said, "You all have to be silent for 1 whole minute." The cafeteria goes silent. I'm watching the stoplight. It's flashing red. Goes to solid red, goes to yellow, green, then off. Then it crashes to the floor. The whole entire cafeteria erupts with laughter, and Mr. Sir sourly walks back to his office. The stoplight monitor was removed and never spoken of again. I have no idea how or why the stoplight crashed to the floor, but I like to think that it was just karma getting back at Mr. Sir. I was driving a big rig with civilian plates across town to my friend's shop so it can be broken down and overhauled. That truck has a rev limiter, so it tops out at 60 miles per hour and the highway speed here is 65, so obviously it's a right laner. I was pretty much cruising at max speed coming up on an interchange. Traffic was light, so I had no problems all night until this interchange came up. In my mirror, I saw a fast-moving set of lights headed behind me, then to my left, then directly in front of me. By this time, there was less than 20 to 30 yards of space between my truck and the wall, and the jerk cuts me off and slams his brakes to try and squeeze in the invisible gap. I missed hitting him, but he managed to miss the exit and clip the wall hard enough to see sparks. I pulled over and by then had radioed for help. The driver and 2 passengers got out and started walking to my truck. I opened the door but never stepped off the cab and noticed they are beefed, and immediately they start accusing me of making them crash. I was screwed. I didn't have a dash cam on this truck since it was retired and it was on civilian tags. In the distance, I spot the disco cruiser heading our way and alert the idiots yelling at me. They start panicking and get back to their car. First cop that showed up was a bike cop. We each gave our stories, and while he's interviewing the passengers, 2 more showed up. Second cop didn't know what was going on. I was talking to the first cop. Both the cops were grilling me as to why I had civilian plates and not tractor-trailer tags. While this was going on, Cop 3 showed up and immediately rushed the driver and cuffed him. Cop 1, 2, and 3 go into a huddle, and Cop 1 comes up to me and tells me they were kids out on a joyride with a car they stole from a casino valet. I was pretty much sent on my way when they found out it was legal to have civilian plates on a semi-truck. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.